And right off the bat, I got apologize because we have an executive session to do with Victoria. And the reason I need to do it at first is because we're plugging in with one of the attorneys, David, and we're kind of on his timeline. So Victoria, what's it on? Potential litigation, 5 minutes. So we'll try and do that real quick. And once again, I apologize, but we'll be right back.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:41.
Hey, back from an executive session, no decisions were made, so appreciate the indulgence. We have, we'll get right into juvenile courts. Mr. Moya.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. George Moya, Juvenile Court Administrator. What you have today is an approval to extend 2 contracts. One is our contract with Wahkiakum County, and the other one was Pacific County. This contract essentially allows us to have house juveniles that are under the jurisdiction of each county in our detention facility.
Not sure the green light's on.
Can you press the green light?
There it is.
Okay.
You probably need to repeat it for our audience.
Sure.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. Well, that's pretty loud. Good afternoon, George Moya, Juvenile Court Administrator. Commissioners, what I have in front of you today is 2 contracts. We're trying to extend contracts for our contract with Wahkiakum County and Pacific County. Contracts are to allow some of their offender youth to be housed in our detention facility. We've had these contracts for a while, and what we're asking for today is to extend those contracts to continue to provide those services. This is revenue towards the general fund.
And how many juveniles typically each month come to us from these 2 counties?
That's very difficult to say, Commissioner. It varies. You know, we do have contracts bet with them.
How many days last year?
I don't have those numbers. I have the revenue that was accrued from the years prior.
Mhm. Is there ever a time when those folks from those 2 counties outnumber the Cowlitz County residents?
That's also tough to say. It varies. Each week it varies.
So it could.
It
actually.
could
Does-
potentially.
And I know we've discussed before our concerns about the fact that the numbers are so low and yet we have to operate a 24/7 service. That's what the state law requires, so.
Yeah, I think this kind of contract is the right kind of thing. We've got an opportunity to be neighborly and help the taxpayer along, so it makes sense. I would only inquire, can we make this be a something that lasts longer, a more permanent arrangement? It's a sunk cost. And if we could have agreements with whatever counties, that would be wonderful. And I don't view that as just income for us. I'm viewing it as an idle facility.
I would agree with you, Commissioner. If we can make this more of something for longevity.
Yeah.
Some of these contracts, though, you know, in terms of at least Wahkiakum's, we're looking at the original contract back in 2005, and I believe 98 for Pacific County. Wish I could make them permanent. Sometimes, though, we do have to kind of revisit the daily rate in terms of what the cost of doing business is with them too.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking specifically, then it's mentioned by law we have to and so forth, but is there a law that says we cannot combine efforts from multiple counties. So as opposed to having 3 detention centers,
Yes.
say, we have only 1 detention center. And of course, you want them in the neighboring counties, but
Yeah, I know you don't have Columbia County here, but you will have that pretty soon as well. We also do contract with Columbia County. And so that would be our 3rd contract as well. So,
just across the river.
correct. Mhm.
And do we do Clatsop County at all?
We do, I think that contracts is, we do. Yeah, the short answer is
Okay,
yes.
I thought we had,
Yes,
we were kind of a regional facility, but.
Right.
And yet the numbers are so low.
correct.
Out of curiosity, how much do we charge per day?
$152 per day.
And that's decided by negotiating the dollar amount from time to time?
Yes, and another factor is also juvenile rehabilitation kind of sets the rate as well for the state level. And so most detention facilities follow that suit at the state level standard. It also keeps it also, competitive with the neighbors too. I mean, I would like to offer a $200 rate, but if JR is offering the $152 rate, then most counties will say, well, why do we pay more than the state?
Right.
So.
I like that thinking.
I'm assuming when they get here, Wahkiakum and stuff brings them up on their bus. We don't have the school bus running around to the counties and picking up.
It's not a bus, no, no, they do provide their own transportation. So our detention officers are offhands in terms of any transportation. Yeah, most of their cost and transportation is to, their county, either Pacific or Wahkiakum in this case.
As long as we have you here, how about a relevant question? How long does someone in the facility stay on average? Are we looking at 3 days, 3 months?
Well, that averages 2, because the difficulty in that, commissioners, is that sometimes you'll get youth from other jurisdictions, right? In this case, it would be Pacific, Wahkiakum, and then we have our local kids from Cowlitz County. And so depending on what their sentence may be or how long it's taking for their case to get resolved, that skews the numbers. So at any given time, each week, we can start looking at that. What does it look like for this week? Well, this week is looking like 3 days or 5 days. Next week could look like 7 days or go back to 5 days based on the amount of youth that we have and the length of their stay.
Yeah, I think we all know that. We're just looking for a number. The number does exist. It's on average of the last 100 clients, they stayed an average of 3.5 days. I mean, that's a number you should be able to produce for us.
Could be 4 to 5 days.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And if I get the pool bigger in terms of adding also the other counties, it could be that number can change.
Yeah.
So one could be locally or one could be overall.
I remember as a teacher, high school teacher, we would be responsible for monitoring the progress of the students in juvie at their, lessons and try to figure out. And they were there for such a short time, it was almost irrelevant to know what kind of learning went on. And sometimes we didn't want to know exactly what kind of learning went on, but that's not necessarily the school learning. But yeah, it's the pretty short duration.
Yes.
Longer term juveniles go to a different facility. Those who are sentenced to months.
They
at a
do.
time?
So what we typically have in our detention facility, it's just kind of what we call local sanctions. Local sanctions can be anywhere between 1 to 30 days detention. So that's really the max that we're looking at. Sometimes the stay could be a lot longer if, let's say, for instance, the crime was pretty heinous, and so the charges are very serious in nature, then that case can take a little bit longer to resolve. And so that would all depend on how long is it to get their trial going. Maybe there's more evidence needed, maybe. So that length of stay can go beyond the 30 days. But typically, it's between 1 and 30 days detention. Anyone outside of a 30-day detention, it's usually a state type of rehabilitation center.
And the closest one is in Lewis County.
What's that? I'm sorry.
The closest one of those state detention centers
The
is
closest one is Green Hill.
Green Hill,
Yes.
Lewis County.
Yeah. And with the recent closure of Nacelle, they're having more difficulty in terms of the amount of youth that they can hold at Green Hill. Echo Glen is the other facility. So technically now the state has two facilities for the entire state. So that means from the east side of the Cascades to the west side of the Cascades, everyone goes to two facilities. About 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with an area administrator from the state that was asking if we would be able to, hypothetically speaking, if they were to do some parole violations. Locally, we call them probation violations, so they're not following what they're supposed to be doing. And we can file probation violations locally. And these youth may be in our facility, again, between 1 and 30 days. At the state level, they can do the same thing at the state level. If they're on parole, they're out on release, and they're not following their conditions of their release, they can also have parole violations. And the question was, can we house in our detention facility? And they're going through up and down I-5, asking every facility on I-5 they can do that because they're running out of beds. Again, for the whole state, you only have two facilities. Something's got to give. You don't have enough staffing and not enough beds for the entire state. So now they're looking at local facilities so they can be housing parole violations. So, and the answer to that is yes. We currently have a contract with JR, and we've had a contract with them for a long time. Typically, if a youth is committed to a JR facility, which goes beyond the 30 days, we have a contract that kicks in the minute they are found and are convicted of said crime that allows them to stay a longer stay. They become JR jurisdiction. So they become the jurisdiction of the state. And we kick in that rate immediately in detention. And we start charging and reimbursing the state for that.
And you get prompt payment?
I'm sorry?
And you get prompt payment? I'm being a little sarcastic because DOC is very slow on paying. Same kind of thing.
We'll get our money.
for state.
Yeah, we'll get our money. Yeah.
Interesting.
So in many ways, the only use we can actually be is to help structure presenting the data. And one of the data items I'd like to see is ties into this notion of how many occupancy days there are total capacity in the Juvenile Detention Center and how many of those days get used. So if we had one single cell, let's say, that would be, do we do leap years? Anyhow, 365 days of occupancy potential. And if you had one person there for 3 days, that would be a percent that you'd have it occupied. That would tell us a lot about how we could go talk to our legislatures and say, you know, this doesn't make sense for the taxpayer. Why don't we combine and make some changes? And so if we could have those numbers, I'd find that helpful. And on a personal basis, more or less, because it's neither here nor there, I toured the Nacelle facility, and frankly, I was impressed with them, and that they closed it. And then your comments here, it's like, are we doing yet another stupid thing?
My opinion, they shouldn't have closed it. You know, I think it was providing a service that was needed. You know, it is not it wasn't for really high risk offenders. So that means it was a camp. It was more geared towards putting some work back into the community, doing some restorative practices.
Precisely, yeah.
And so, but again, that's just my opinion. I don't make those decisions.
Well,
And now
I have that
they're having to
opinion
deal
too.
with the consequences of that. So
any chance that it'll be opened again?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
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 Because what they were clearly doing is bringing people who were sort of on the wrong path, kind of nudging them over in a very constructive way.
Yeah. I'm just kind of sitting, because I don't know much about the facility and I'm trying to kind of gather it in. I think right off the bat, I don't think anybody here has any issues with your contracts. We'd probably like to see more for sure. I'm just be more interested in what you think the system. I get the sense because we don't house a lot of people and we have a facility, and I don't think we're alone in that. I think other places that do are in that same boat. How do we get more efficient, or how do we utilize this stuff better? And I'm not sure I have answers, but I'd love to talk to my legislators about it, but I'd also like to have input, people that actually in the system and can tell me what I should be talking about.
Well, I can tell you this, Mr. Chairman, we're not unique, as you mentioned that, we're not unique in that area. A lot of the counties around the state are having the same type of numbers that we're having. They're having low numbers as well. And there's just a myriad of factors contributing to that, so.
How do we get the ability to maybe work with other counties that have a facility and work something out? Is that a legislative thing? I mean,
I have not investigated that. I would
Yeah.
assume that it may be. It's a jurisdictional subject matter.
Well, it is a state law that says if you have over 50,000
Mhm.
population, you've got to have 24/7 juvie.
yeah,
So that at a minimum has to be done,
but having the ability to work with whatever county and said, maybe we'll take, and we've bannered about this before, and I don't even know if it's possible. We have a situation where we have mental issues in the jail, and you don't really like mixing those people. Well, if you have an agreement with another, maybe they take the mental and we take the other, or vice versa. I'm wondering how to get more flexibility for you guys to work.
You belong to an organization, I would guess, a statewide organization of people in charge of the juvenile detention centers,
Juvenile court administrators,
something like that,
Yeah.
because that may be a good avenue. I think if we got half of the counties together, at least, we could start making enough noise to get attention at Olympia to change some of these useless laws.
Yeah, I'm not in a mode to mandate things you should do, but I think you should have the ability to expand, and when you see opportunities and not be limited is more where I'm coming from. Let's take off some limits. And if we think it makes sense, then you guys do it. That's where I'm trying to find is what limits are out there that we could possibly remove that may be beneficial down the road for us using our facilities and stuff more efficiently.
And
It's probably a longer conversation, but
yeah. Well, with apologies to your boss, we'd like to see you more, or I would like to see you more often.
Yeah.
Thank you, and likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
So-
we have commissioners, I know we have a workshop coming up. I know it's in our calendar, so I
Yeah.
look forward to that.
Yeah.
And thank you for the insight as to Commissioner Mortensen as to the details that you're looking into. So duly noted.
So
Yeah.
maybe we give you enough that we can bring some of those issues back and chat with them a little bit.
Well, I also welcome you to come to our juvenile court,
Yeah.
and then we can have more discussions that I give you a proper tour of the facility. I know, Mr. Chairman, I don't think you've been to our detention facility or.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. I will, I promise I'll do that.
Welcome that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah, yeah. All right.
Simple question. How many beds are in the juvenile facility?
We have about 72 beds.
And what is the number of occupants you have there today?
Today, we may have 12.
So what is that, a 15 to 20% occupancy rate?
Approximately, yes.
If you were running a hotel, you'd be fired. So my question is, we have right next door, we have a problem with the jail because we have mental patients in there. And that becomes a reason why we can't put more criminals in jail. So my simple question is, why can't we use part of the juvie center for the mental people?
We've actually been talking about that, and there are some logistical issues about mixing, how to prevent adults and juvies from intermixing, and that's a huge challenge. But at least one concept is, and we've had at least very informal communications with a neighboring county of joining our juvie center so that we could free up the facility for seriously mentally ill as a jail annex. But, we're a long ways away from making a decision on that. In fact, we have to get the state law changed. As I said, we have to have a 24/7 juvie no matter what, because we meet that population threshold. But I'm actually encouraged about the opportunity of changing that law. As you said, a lot of the counties are experiencing the same kinds of things. There's got to be increasing demands to change that whole concept. What I'm worried is that all of a sudden the state is discovering a way to avoid having to build another facility because of the unused spaces in all the counties, which means they're shifting the burden on the county. Wouldn't take very long for them to say, yeah, we're not going to do 152. That's too much. Yeah, and I'm worried about that. That's, we don't have any control over.
That would.
But we've
certainly-
definitely had the kind of discussion that you're.
Well, see, it's time to get past discussions.
Well-
We have been talking all year about all the crime and the homelessness and all of those kind of things all over the county. Well, part of the reason that these people are running all over the county is because we don't have jail space. And one of the reasons we don't have jail space is because we have mental patients and we have a place right next door that we could build a first-class facility to take care of them the way they should. So the question is, how many more years are we going to talk and make the rest of the community victims of just talking?
There's some interesting issues there, and yes, it's a lot of talking. We could build a new juvenile facility and just commandeer the current one and put that in under the under the jail. I mean, that's an option we really haven't talked much about, but I'm a little, that the juvenile facility is pretty seriously well done facility, it seems to me. It's you could put adults in there and they're not going to break out overnight. Of the juveniles you do see, do we have, I know this is really an awkward question. I'm thinking that a lot of juveniles who get in this system aren't really what I would call psychopaths or anything like that. They just need a little bit of guidance. But every now and then you're going to have someone beyond guidance. Do you have any idea how often, what percentage? We're talking about 2% of the population you see is you figure they're destined to be in the big house for a long time.
I mean, that's tough to say because we have crimes that are classified as serious offenses. And there's some that are not. And so to distinguish between both and how many, I'd have to run the numbers. And
That's why we use the judge too.
Yeah.
No, I meant trying to decide which side of the line it falls in, serious or not serious. That's where the judicial, where we count on the judges helping us.
And that's data that we can certainly get. We can run numbers. How many youth are adjudicated based on what seems to be a serious offense versus a non-serious offense.
I got a tour of the facility, and you'll be very interested when you go over there. And the tour guide happened to be a judge. And I point blank asked the judge, is there any reason we couldn't divide this existing facility to satisfy the separation that we're talking about? And he didn't give me any reason or any doubt that we could split that facility the way it is, as long as we maintain the proper protection for the juvenile. So let's not overthink this. We've got a facility, and I think we can probably make it work.
One of the opportunities, I'll put it that way, is that we do not run the youth services division. That's not a county commissioner job. It's been a task assigned to the Superior Court. So we have to work collaboratively with them. And that, like I said, that's one of the opportunities. And those discussions are kind of beginning. I mean, we've had a few discussions about it.
How fast can we accelerate them and get something done?
I don't disagree.
If you're in charge, it'll be done soon.
Do we need a motion to approve his contracts?
You probably do.
If,
Yeah.
then I would entertain
Well,
such at pleasure.
Do we do that in this session? We usually do contracts in our Tuesday morning session. This is more of just a workshop to answer
Workshop.
those questions. It'll be on next week's workshop.
Most likely.
Okay.
The time,
Get it done in time. Yeah.
the timeliness is okay. I mean, you can wait till next week, next Tuesday is what you're
Oh,
asking, right?
that won't be a
Yeah,
problem.
okay. I think that's,
So what you get from us here now is that we'll all three support it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for your
thank
time.
you.
we ought to give His Honor an opportunity to weigh in on
If
our
you'd like
discussion,
to,
if he
absolutely.
wants to.
Do we have to stand up first?
You do not. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Judge Gary Bashor, presiding judge for Superior Court. I came over mainly just as if there were questions that George didn't have at his fingertips. I don't have any of the answers that he doesn't have, as in numbers, because he's more on top of that piece. Just a couple of brief comments. I guess these contracts really just go into the expense of running that building. They don't add, bringing those kids in doesn't add significant incremental costs. So if we bring another kid in, we don't need to bring a detention officer in. So they're, I won't say they're pure profit, but they're revenue that comes in that helps us pay the bills out there. Just a comment on the mixing piece, really we're guided, not guided by, we're mandated by federal law to not have kids within sight and sound of adults in jail or prison. So that creates some
What was that phrase again?
sight and sound. So they can't hear them, they can't see them.
Mhm.
That's just how that works out is they usually are in separate facilities. I think.
So you couldn't use the same entrance and exits for,
You could, you'd have to figure out a way to not have them passing in the hallway and that sort of thing. So you'd probably need to wall it off down the middle and put an
Right.
entrance at the other end or something,
then an entrance closer to the jail, which would facilitate.
which
the-
probably makes sense anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the cost of doing all that. I know doing hardscape upgrades inside of jail facilities is more expensive than doing a garage or shop, especially when you're working at prevailing rates. So you're talking a chunk of money. I don't know how much, that's not been looked into. I don't think there are, other than the legal requirements, there's not a restriction that would stop that from happening.
And the other thing I always have to remind myself is that the expenses of the Youth Services Division is not just in the incarceration, but we have ongoing additional services for, not really work release, but probation and
Correct.
community service type supervision. So that program continues whether we house them or not.
Correct.
And that's where the rehabilitation and is
And
And
they're
those are the
receiving
kind-
education. I mean, we have classrooms at the Juvenile Detention Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have classrooms. We also have the at-risk youth program for kids that are having challenges with their families. And we have the truancy program, which doesn't impact the court proceedings very much anymore. The other thing that impacts housing the number of kids in that facility, if you go back probably 10 years, our numbers were significantly higher. There's been changes in state law which do not allow kids to be kept in custody for the most part. I'm not able to issue a warrant for a kid who doesn't show up for court unless they're known to be, they're perceived to be a danger to the community, like physical harm, not just they're out running around. So they've really pulled back our ability to put kids in custody. There's some general trends nationwide that kids shouldn't be locked up. We've all heard those legislators talk, and those are the laws we're working with. So filling it up locally is probably not something that's likely to happen. I'm not sure we want that because that would mean violent crimes would be going up. So, and I think the other piece is that the kids that we're seeing in custody probably would tend to be more serious crimes because the lesser crimes are not being kept in custody. So it's a tougher nut to crack, so to speak. Yeah. So we're here to answer questions about extending this and hopefully keeping some revenue coming in to help pay the bills.
Other than the whole question of capacity, I know my comments shouldn't be misconstrued as a criticism. I think the department's well run
Thank you.
based on the low numbers that we have, and we've got good quality staff. So don't think that I'm coming down hard on Juvie Center because that's not. It's just we've got a lot of empty rooms that could be used differently.
We appreciate that. We try and do a very good job out there. So
And one modestly unfair question, how are we doing on finding a courthouse you like?
you know, I reached out to the National Center for State Courts to see if there were any recently constructed courthouses that were similar in size that would cover our capacity. There just aren't any. There's nothing in Washington that's a new courthouse. So I think the idea of coming up with, here's a set of plans, we can just buy them off the shelf and plant it. I think that's probably, I'm not having a lot of luck there. A lot of success.
Are you suggesting our Hall of Justice is state of the art?
Depends on which state you're talking about.
Okay.
By recent,
With state of the art. But we definitely have our challenges there.
what was your time window there? Were you going back 10 years or?
I would say state of the art was 73, I think, when it was built. It was probably state of the art at that time.
Right, but we learned a lot because there were many changes society changed, not arguing about how or why, it just did. But certainly we've built courthouses since then, have we not?
I'm sure there have been courthouses been built. The inquiry that came from the board was if there's been anything kind of recently built.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry. The inquiry I was responding to was the one about recently constructed, and I guess I wasn't looking back 20 years.
Yeah,
And part of that, frankly, is if you go back 20 years, we didn't all have computers on the bench. We didn't have, so a lot of the construction that would have been done 20 years ago is not going to be what we need today. We're going to have to redesign those plans because right now we don't have enough electricity in that building to run all the computers in there. When we're making
Right,
some more
right.
office space and.
but if we could get that free and then we could, our architects could then start to think about how to incorporate the current technology.
I don't disagree with that. I think getting a set of architectural plans for a commercial building for free are going to be challenging. And finding something that's essentially current as far as design is, there's just not a lot of courthouses being built right now or in the last 10 years that I seem to be able to locate. I mean,
And
if you design it after a federal courthouse, it's going to cost a whole lot of money.
And then the other approach was to develop what you'd call the allocation of space for a courtroom. And so you'd parameterize a courtroom and you'd say, I need 5 of these. And then an architect could start to set those out. You would look at them and say, no, this hallway is too long and it's too close to this, or, you know, something like that. But at least we'd be able to get
I
the
think
ball going.
I sent over just in the last month, a design study or a design report about courthouse design, current courthouse design. I think I sent it to all 3 commissioners.
I
If
was
didn't,
bemoaning earlier that I get about anywhere from 300 to 600 emails a day.
I'll
So
be happy to,
sorry.
I'll be happy to resend it.
Yeah, please do.
It's a very nicely put together presentation about, I guess, what you would call optimal courthouse design for now.
Cool. Like that.
And boy, if we had that, it'd be fantastic. That's probably more than we're asking for, I can tell you, but I'll be happy to resend that.
I'll remember you said that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was probably designed for, again, for the federal courts. They seem to have a lot more of a budget to work with than we do.
That's the difference between having to have a balanced budget and not having to.
Well, there's
balance
that.
budget.
There's that.
Ooh, very perceptive. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I'll resend that to all of you, so you've got that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you, Judge. I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you all for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
One comment that the judge made, he talked about the cost of fixing the existing facility. I tend to think in cost in terms of all of the, I don't know what to call it, but we have all of the mental patients in a bad place where they can't get the treatment. So I don't know how you put a value on that kind of damage that's being done or the cost. And then because of the fact that we can't actually use the jail, look at the damage to the entire community that's being done because we're not fixing the problem. So yeah, I understand the hard cost of fixing the jail, but that's not the real cost. The real cost is what it's doing to the rest of the community by not having this taken care of.
Saw a hand, but then
Marin had. her
there's
hand up.
Marin.
There she
Okay.
is.
Hi, good afternoon. Marin Fox, Director of Corrections. Just wanted to offer a few comments on the use of jail space at the Juvenile Detention Center. In addition to the construction cost, we need to keep in mind staffing a second facility. The jail is currently down 5 officer positions in like jails across this state. We are struggling to get applicants. I believe we had 1 applicant in the last month. So in order to operate a second facility, we need to keep in mind staffing up. Additionally, we would probably need at least 8 additional staff to operate a second facility. That's give you two people on staff, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the other piece that will need to be looked at is the medical contract. If we were in fact going to use the Juvenile Detention Center for our higher needs mental health inmates, we would have to expand the medical contract we have in place at the jail to cover that facility as well, because those are more high acuity medical and mental health needs. So those are 2 factors. We also have not had any significant restrictions to our bookings since December. The only thing that's been restricted is driving with a suspended license. So we're accepting all bookings, unlawful camping, all of it. So, I think it's a societal issue. It's a criminal justice systems issue. It's adding more beds to the jail may help. We certainly could use them, as it's been said many times. We're a mental health facility largely in some ways. So I'm certainly not turning down assistance in that way, but I do think it's a big picture issue, and adding beds isn't going to fix some of what you're seeing in the community. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marin.
Yeah.
Thank you both for coming over. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Miscellaneous, I see Kim out there, or who wants to go? Okay.
You realize your competition has a nice colored PowerPoint.
Oh,
I'm gonna let her just, that's her thing. I just have one question for the board. So we are starting to see an inflow of granges coming forward requesting some ARPA assistance. We had 2 more come forward last week asking. So I wanted to see if the board wanted to put some sort of limit on how much we are, if it, if the request is below 10,000 and they can provide the backup expenses to justify it, if we just move forward, or if the board wants to see every request. I'm happy to do either way. I just didn't want to be up here every week with a couple $1,000 requests. I'm good with whatever the board wants to do, though.
I want to see every request.
Okay.
But no, that good.
Are they varying largely from,
Our
Okay.
highest so far was 7,000.
yeah,
And
that was
then-
the last one we approved.
Yes, and the
And the
lowest
other
was
one was-
1,400.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're justifying every expense. I have them provide financial statements showing no revenue was coming in, which they were closed for COVID. So all of that is being verified. Like I said, I'm happy to do it either way. I just didn't want to.
It's probably good to bring them through,
Okay.
but otherwise at some point in time, somebody say, how come you guys aren't reviewing these? Like, I know how that works, so we should review them.
Okay.
I mean, I don't
I know we don't have.
really
the-
have an issue with them.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of active granges left, so the numbers won't be huge.
No, we have the Silver Lake Grange and then the other was the Sunny Side.
Okay.
Those were the 2 that came forward last week requesting information and
They were both
project.
around 7,500 or,
The Silver Lake Grange, he did get me his request, but I have not had time to dig in deep to it. His is the largest so far. It's looking around 10,000, but I have a few questions before I make that official request from the board. But I have not seen anything back from the Sunny Side, so I'm not sure what their number will look like.
I mean, as a guideline, should we just set nothing, it would range over 10,000? You give her guidance.
No, I wouldn't, I wouldn't do that, but I am familiar with the Rose Valley Grange, and I understood the dollar amounts there that were asked, and I imagine Rick's going to check out the Silver Lake Grange, or I would guess. but, I'd like for us to go see these facilities before we put the money out is really all I'm saying.
I'll just keep bringing the requests so you know who and how much, and then we can go from there. All right,
Okay.
and then we're wrapping up the second quarter come the end of this month, so we will bring another quarterly report to the board in July. And we have requested from Public Works an update on all of their projects like we had previously discussed, so
Oh,
we
good.
should have that to you guys. If we don't get it before the next quarterly update, we'll for sure have it for you then when we do that.
Okay, great.
And then we have Kim, it looks like she sent your presentation, her presentation to you guys, so I will hand it over to her and I will stay here if there's anything further from us.
Okay.
Thank
thanks.
you.
Commissioners, Kim Hort, IT Director. Today, I'm going to be sharing a presentation and then also honoring some talented staff that I have in the office. So for introductions, we have Lance Hollinsworth. He is our network engineer. Aaron Briggs, he's our cybersecurity enterprise analyst. And then David Feldman is our database administrator. And in the hallway or on the call is Jordan Cole. He is Lance's apprentice.
He just walked in.
Ta-da, there he is. He is our network analyst. My computer went to sleep, so we're having technical difficulties. It's waking up.
You may have to call IT.
I might know a few. So a couple of weeks ago, plus some holidays in between, you had asked that I prioritize some of the projects that I think are valuable to the county. And that's not just a decision I've made on my own. I've collaborated with my team and vendors. And so before you today is our presentation and a list prioritizing various projects. There's a total of 9 items, but I worked with the team and we built out the presentation articulating the top 2 and kind of lumping together the rest under item 3. Lance, do you want to join me for this part? So the primary request is for $750,000 of ARPA funding. Behind that is a disaster recovery focus where we could address technology and resources to do offsite backups. This
If I could interrupt you, I really would like on each of these to say what is capital and what is recurring. And I'd like a problem statement right at the start that says, this is the problem I'm trying to solve.
Okay, this is my problem statement, and this is what we're trying to solve is the business continuity and disaster recovery and what it's for. It's ensuring that critical services remain operational if one location or a system is compromised due to a malicious attack.
Okay, one of the difficulties I have is trying to get a handle on we've been operating for a fair number of years without a disaster recovery program. What level of disaster recovery are we thinking about? In some systems, you would duplicate everything in Omaha, Nebraska, duplicate what we have here in Omaha, Nebraska, and then we'd switch over in case an earthquake hit us. So I hope that as you go through this, I will know exactly what foreseeable problem and what unforeseeable problem we're trying to protect against.
Okay, so currently our backup solution is we back up to the equipment within the same server room. And so we are essentially kind of a cliche, putting all of our eggs in one basket. So if that backup device were to be compromised, or if we were to lose that device because of hardware failure, we wouldn't have secondary and offsite backup solutions to refer back to. We have had cloud storage solutions. The contract term had ended. We did not back up all critical infrastructure because not all infrastructure was identified, whether it was critical. And then Lance, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or David Feldman is helping with our backups. So if you want some additional technical response to that.
No, I'm looking at it as from objectives. Are we a bank or do we have to protect everything? What is it that I see the statement and sure, we should be protected, but I don't know what that really translates to. And I look at 750K, that's a capital or that's what we pay per year?
That would be a combination of capital with service fees included. We're not paying $750,000 a year.
And I know that we already store tons of stuff offsite. We send stuff to Olympia, and the court system also has obligations. Are we talking? Let's see what we're doing. Offsite and offsite. Okay. So on that top one, do we have enough offsite storage in Olympia?
We don't keep paper copies of everything. We have a lot of digital record. So this is also addressing offsite digital replication of our data.
Yeah, don't we digitize stuff these days and it gets archived with the state archives?
I'm not aware of the digital documents going to the state. I'm aware of paper copies going to the state.
Well, they digitize them. And if I go to the auditor's office and I ask them, tell me what happened to the close of, or show me the marriage license of 3 years ago, of somebody. Where is that stored?
We have a lot of documents within Laserfish, specifically the auditor's records. I would have to defer that to the team that manages the Eagle recording software. I do believe we keep those records within Laserfish.
Okay, so if we have Laserfish and for some reason it dissolves, that 3-year-old marriage certificate also goes by the wayside?
I'm not familiar with whether or not they send digital copies of a marriage license to the state, so I can look into that for you if you would like.
Yeah, these are questions that are intrinsic to what kind of data, where is the data now, how unprotected or protected are we? And okay, go ahead.
With the first request, it's not just a matter of being able to retrieve a digital image. This is also including infrastructure to where if we were to have a catastrophic failure with our data center, which houses 80 virtual servers, I'm throwing out a number, but it's approximately up there, 75. If we were to have a critical infrastructure issue where a host on the data center goes down, this includes the ability for us to essentially spin up a virtual host and re-image and redeploy, thank you, our production services, and then would allow us to address the issue with the appliance that we have here on site. So if it were to be a hardware malfunction and it takes 2 weeks for us to get a part, this would allow us to virtually spin up another virtual server or host from this backup and these resources. So we wouldn't have a 2-week window of downtime.
So Kim, you identified this $750,000 as a ARPA investment.
Correct.
So none of these are one-time only costs?
There are annual costs, like for instance, the proposal, we are shopping around from a vendor called Datto is for like $500,000 for 400 terabytes. And their proposal is a 3-year cost. So it would be a multi-year. I do have that in front of me. It's just.
So my thinking.
But there is
My
annual
thinking
license.
is actually along the lines of the ARPA funds are one-time only funds.
Correct.
So we need to be careful about making purchases that require ongoing expenses
Mhm.
with a fund that disappears on us. If the ongoing expenses are absolutely critical elements of our IT system, then we need to be looking at the regular allocation system. But if it's like a one-time only thing, like much of our ARPA expenditures have been, then I'm much more open to that. So I don't know how much of that is one time only or whether it's part of the substantial program that we should have had all along.
I'm of the opinion that this is a substantial program that we should have had all along. We don't diversify a risk. We don't have offsite backup solutions. It is a subscription based, and this is just one of the proposals. It could be something that's $14,000 a month, or it could be $9,000 a month. Again, it varies, and I understand that there would be ongoing cost. This would take the burden off of the implementation and getting the additional, I think Lance listed in there, a diverse path for internet. So it would be secondary resources as well, to where it wouldn't just be for offsite backups. This is a full disaster recovery request. So it's not just offsite backups.
we currently are struggling with trying to define retention on all the data we have. Some of it is worth keeping, some isn't, and somewhere in between. And a piece of answering whether this is on the right path or not would require what I mentioned to you before in the past, which is we kind of need the 5-year IT plan. What is the vision? How do these pieces interplay? And I cannot see that. So it's what I think I see, and if I'm judging it incorrectly, please straighten me out. I don't view the ARPA money that was stated outright as uncommitted as being meaning that it should be used immediately or it's open game. Now I know you've got a reserve fund, right? And you've got some of those things that must come out of the reserve fund, I would suspect. And also you've got don't remember exactly how it goes, but there was an $80,000 grant through the auditor's office and was with $80,000 for each of 3 years, so for $240K. And we've already gone beyond the deadline of the original 80,000, so we've lost that.
No, we have not.
Okay, I guess I'm misinformed on that. So
The deadline is,
I beg your pardon?
the deadline is quickly approaching. Yes.
Oh, that's the second tranche, isn't it?
No, this is the first.
Okay, and that deadline is the next few days?
Mhm.
What things are we looking at there?
That one is been reallocated because of the lead time for the Cisco Core Catalyst switch. It was something that took, I think they were projecting October, so that falls outside of the state's fiscal year. And so I worked with Carolyn and reapplied for the grant for the first portion of the year, and they permitted that we are allowed to use those funds for our telephone system. So I have been expensing costs and been approved to allocate $80,000 towards that. And have been,
So of the 240,000, we're not going to lose any of it.
I'm trying not to.
No, are we in jeopardy to lose any of it?
We could be, due to timing and product lead time. I was on a phone call late yesterday working with our vendor to get telephones and things that are part of our cost so we can offset it with the grant funding.
But we know about this ahead of time, right? I'm only focused on results, right? And the rationale behind why I'm late or not late doesn't mean as much to me because I know these things have been, well, how long ago, maybe if Carolyn was on, she could tell me how long ago we've known about the funding, excuse me.
I've also been having time with lead time of the product and materials for the telephone system.
Well, life is the way it is today with the supply chain problems everybody's having. And I want to be sure that we're not just thinking it's free money, because this money actually belongs to the public.
And so does this data. And so I'm,
Well, but that's where I want to see the case that says if we don't spend this money, we lose this data. And I don't see that yet.
I don't know if my team has anything that they would like to add. If this is a moot point, we can go on to another option.
But yeah.
Green light is on, so heard David Feldman database administration, IT. I think that there are data in various places. As you mentioned, there may be some at the state archives and such. If that data is there, it doesn't necessarily put it into a format where we can immediately use it. It would be compatible with state archive systems. It wouldn't necessarily be compatible with systems that we run here at the county or that our employees have training on. We currently don't have any interface directly into state systems as far as I'm aware for things like that.
I just probably have too many gray hairs. You remember the old sneaker net? You sound like you remember. Anyhow, there are some simple and complicated solutions, but we don't know what's applicable if we don't know the value of the data we're trying to protect and how much we would spend to protect the data. So if the data is worth much less than what it costs us, then like we archive everything. I send an email to you and say, David, let's go out to lunch. We archive that. And everything that I know is valuable to archive, like in the auto registration, marriage certificates, that's already done. And it's already in different places. That is to say, it's got the geographical redundancy or back up there. Excuse me. So I'm still trying to figure out stuff. Now, there is something that happened, I think in 2019 when the auditor couldn't do recording because there was a failure in the server. And that is unacceptable. But we're not talking about that, are we?
I think we are. If we have,
You mean that you need to spend $750,000 to do a simple backup of a server?
I wasn't here in 2019 when that.
I know, but that's the picture I'm trying to paint to you is that we had a server and it went down and it stayed down for a while. I think it was a couple of days, but I don't recall. Dennis, do you recall?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I turned 70 since then, so.
You had mentioned something in a previous conversation regarding that server, and it was, I believe it was actually an Exchange server that was in the computer room, and water from the HVAC system had leaked onto the actual server
Yeah.
and destroyed the motherboard.
Is
And
that what happened?
that's what happened.
Okay.
The HVAC system, the condenser
Right.
broke.
But the problem I have with that is the serving the clients is really very important. We can't have them come up to us and we're saying, our computer's down, we can't help you. But for doing that, there are many solutions. And I would certainly like to see a plan that says, we can't keep the window open at the counter if we don't have this and this and this. All I see here is a little bit of what is it? Let me get to that slide. I've read tons and tons of advertisements. I would look at this and I'd say, this is someone trying to sell me a disaster recovery system. And I don't know if I need it. That's really the question I'm asking. Quantify the problem that I have, qualify it.
As I articulated, this is not just backing up our data. This allows us to spin up critical infrastructure and apply those backup images virtually. So if we were to have another motherboard get rained on because of, an outdated server room, This-
You know, you're using words like outdated server room and critical infrastructure, and I'm struggling because those are roughly undefined terms, but they are somewhat often used. It's like we're calling this an investment. This is not an investment, it's an expense. We're not going to manufacture dollars in income from this.
I apologize for the terminology I used in my presentation. Again, I'm coming to you with my priorities. And I believe that disaster recovery is very important to the county to where we can support and have compliance for insurance, cybersecurity. Underwriting is asking a lot of questions about backup and disaster recovery. This again is an all-encompassing plan. I am budgeting for the actual infrastructure for the backup solution, plus secondary internet and various applications, the plan, the procedure books, the playbooks. It's not just something that's just a copy of our data. It's more than that. This is a plan. This is structure. This is something that we need to operate and support our community. And that's what, again, I'm coming to you as my number one priority.
So, Kim, if we go to option 3, whatever page number that is. Option 3 is the denial of request. Another way of saying that is that's the status quo, right? And it lists some statements about what the department's not able to do. Help me understand what those things are that you're not able to do and why they end up being so critical for us to resolve that problem, or those problems.
I think it's just a reiteration that, again, if we have a host for our virtual data center go down, that can compromise several departments. And if you would like a breakout of what all of our virtual servers are, just to list a few, that's our security cameras, that's Laserfish, that's Spillman. I mean, there's a lot of institutional dependency on IT infrastructure. And if we don't have a plan, if we were to be compromised by ransomware, or if we were to have hardware malfunction, you're going to look at me and be like, let's get it going. And I'm not going to have the tool sets to do that. And if you want us to do an assessment and find how much it would cost for the county to be down 2 weeks, I can work with the department heads and elected officials. But again, this is an industry standard. I'm coming to you because the risk pool is requiring backups and disaster recovery planning. And again, it's very much needed. And I apologize if I'm not articulating in the way that you guys want to hear.
Oh, don't try and trivialize it, though. The use of words is important. If I look at the last sentence in the bullet, it says, regular backups of data and systems also enable quick recovery in case of any disruption or loss. Are you suggesting that we do not do regular backups of data and systems?
We do regular backups of data and system.
Okay, so that's not even germane here at the moment, because we already do that.
We do it on site. We do not have a way of getting that data offsite.
Well, you do have the cloud, and there are many ways of getting the data offsite. Again, I don't know what the 750 buys us. Are we buying a data? Are we buying a server farm in some other place, Chicago, or whatever it is, and we're talking about buying a heavy pipe that sends the data over there?
Much of this is the cloud infrastructure to do that. It's software to coordinate the backups. And it's the service fees of those providers that would be able to have our data come up on virtual machines.
And
Actually, regarding that, we'd be getting a local storage array that we can, choose where to locate. We'll have offsite storage, and we'll have the ability to restore actual servers. And I'd also like to note that our current backup system is sitting underneath that leaky HVAC that we've been having problems on the roof with. So we have that, system that's kind of potentially gonna have there could be a problem. If there was a problem with this building, if there's a problem with this building, if the building caught fire or something, we have no offsite storage for any of our infrastructure.
A little bit to Dennis's question, trying to get a grasp on if somebody out there digging cuts our line to us, I know I'll go black. Who all goes black? I mean, do we support the courthouse? I mean, who all goes black?
When you, could you define the line? Is that the internet line that we're talking about? Or?
Well, we had, data lines into the credit union, and if something got severed, we had backups too. And I'm just trying to figure out if we have a catastrophe and you can't use it can't reach our system here, who all goes black?
That's there. That could be a number of different areas. We have some systems that are in the cloud and others are not. A credit card payment system would be, taken out. If it was the main internet connection, the majority of our infrastructure would be down. It's one of the things that this proposal includes is a secondary diverse path internet feed. So that if we do go down, or if one line is taken out, we'll be able to roll over to the secondary connection.
Many of the courthouse systems run from servers that are running over here. So
Okay,
depends which line gets cut. If the line between here and the courthouse
Yeah.
gets cut, we might have one set of failures if the line coming in on the internet.
I'm trying to get it in my head. I'm trying to remember like everything, say we took a deposit, that transaction, and then it would, right after we did it on our system, it would move to a backup system. So then say 30 minutes later, for whatever reason, our system goes down, then all of a sudden it switches over to a backup and you have all your information again. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Correct, except it wouldn't be about 30 minutes. It would be about 24 hours.
Well, data we have going in the term of minutes. We do full backups every night and we have transactional backups every 20 minutes on data-based systems.
There's many different scenarios. I mean, there's no way to nail down exactly what's going to happen. It's a possibility, but the worst case scenario would be with this system, we'd be able to get back up in a reasonable amount of time.
I imagine at the credit union that if you were at a particular branch and you took that deposit, that information got written to a different building. It wasn't just stored in that particular branch.
Right. Yeah.
Right now, we have it in one building. So if our branch, our building goes down for whatever reason, everything is right there.
Yeah, but that's a little bit, we'd need a lot more detail because in addition to the branches, you've got a central office system, right? And maybe your servers are there and maybe you have that duplicated. Maybe you don't have the branch duplicated, right? If a branch collapses for some reason, a sinkhole sucks it up, you'd say you should go to the other branch. The important thing is that someone's account and all the data is still alive elsewhere.
Right.
Do you know if you had a duplication of the data center
Mm-hmm.
and it was in town or?
Offsite. But I haven't been there for a couple of years. We had one in Missouri.
Yeah, that makes sense. We had one in Las Vegas
Yeah.
versus San Diego. That's even too close to suit me, but
Yeah. And it would copy everything that we did. And so then if for whatever reason, our main systems stop working, for whatever reason they do, hacked or whatever it is, then boom, you're switched over and you're up and running again. It didn't take us long to spool up, so we probably paid a hefty fund for that, but
Yeah, there are always two
Yeah.
questions, a loss of data and the loss of continuity of the business. And they're somewhat related and somewhat independent. And to me, it seems like the data is pretty well handled. I'm not saying perfect. I mean, for perfection in this area, you spend an inordinate amount of money. But for the continuity of operations, I don't know what our requirements are. I'd like to see that in a requirements document there. My feeling is arguments about leaks in the room are like, so you know there's a leak up there. Well, why is that an issue you bring up now? Why isn't that a server duplicated elsewhere or moved away? You know, why don't we fix the leak that's in the roof? All those kinds of things. Those are not reasons to embark on what looks like a new system. And I don't know what the new system is because all I see is a price tag, $750,000. And all we're arguing here with data is valuable, time is valuable. Granted, it's true. But that doesn't help me see what it is and you're trying to do.
The county has never had really a disaster recovery system. And if we were to have any kind of issues with our current backup.
You need to be
system,
closer to the mic.
the county's never really had a formal disaster recovery solution, something that I've been worried about for years now. Most companies that want to save their data, you know, they do have offsite storage in some way, some fashion. We have nothing that I'm aware of.
At one point in previous years, we were backing up to the cloud. There was no ability, from what I understand, it's mostly before my time, where to bring back one server, I understood it took about 2 weeks of downloading data from the cloud. So speaking of business continuity, I don't believe that would be an acceptable proposal to say that we could bring one server back up when we're running somewhere between 75 and 85 servers.
So if I take everything you said, and I say we are currently operating today without any operational redundancy. You want us to spend basically everything we've already spent in IT or the extant value of the IT infrastructure. You want us to duplicate that. You can't do that for $750K. I know that. But you should infer from that I'm asking you, what is it that you're trying to save, and what is the downtime that you consider acceptable or not acceptable? What are your specifications, and what is the magic in here about this? Is this a single vendor? How'd you get the price of $750K? Is that what someone's offering you?
No, it was a combination of, we are doing research. One vendor came back $440,000, and that was with Veeam. Another proposal was a little under $500,000 for a 3-year solution. For that, in addition to, I was including things like the documentation plus the secondary internet pass, which are things that I haven't had a chance to go out and get quotes on. So I may not use the full $750,000. It was something that was, you know, a big chunk of it is the offsite disaster recovery solution.
Gentlemen, I think this could go on for a long time. I think it needs more.
I'm still trying to get my head around it. Is our auditor run off our system? Our treasurer runs off the system, court runs off our system,
Yes.
sheriff runs off our system. So if that room across the hall blew out the side deal, everybody's down. everybody can't conduct business?
The majority, excuse me, the majority of infrastructure would be down. There are some systems in place. The Odyssey application uploads, the Superior Court uses uploads to the state. But that's few and far between. I would say 95% of our infrastructure would be down.
I'm just trying to, because I agree with Arne on how long to be down is acceptable, and I'm trying to decide in my head, if all that was down, how long would the public accept that excuse? And what would be reasonable to them? I don't know that I have the answer.
I think we could reach out to the department heads and elected officials and ask them.
If we're covering all these other areas, should they not be when we allocate funds? I'm almost little with what Commissioner Weber said. It's not really, there's a part of it that's a one-time cost, but it's really an operational cost. And if you bite the bullet and you think if you come to the decision that, yeah, we got to have this, we got to protect whatever, then it becomes an operational cost, and we bite the bullet and it gets allocated out to the departments and those type of things.
The chairman sort of described the expectation, the industry standard, that there's not much downtime in recovering data. We don't come anywhere as close to that right now. So something does definitely need to be changed. I get the sense from you, and I'm afraid to admit that we've been living on borrowed time because we haven't had a catastrophe, and they happen frequently. I'm not sure. I mean, is it that much of a risk that it wipes us out? There aren't too many counties that get wiped out, but it only takes once, I guess. I want to make sure we address the problem that
Yeah.
I
we
wanna
have
be
the
sure-
potential of not having access, not being able to conduct business.
And I think it's important to address the concerns we have. I'm first to admit, I'm not an IT guy. I've been around long enough to know what we did. And so I'd like to make sure that the concerns and questions are answered, and I'm not sure how to go about that because I'm not in that arena. And
Well, you should be nervous when you don't have something that's clearly defined. Dennis just mentioned the problem, but I don't think we know what the problem is. And there are many dimensions there. So one is the storage of information that happened, events that happened last year, they're already all archived. So and the stuff that's happening today down at the auditor's office may or may not be archived. I don't know what the connectivity is to Olympia, and the stuff at the sheriff with the law enforcement's records, they're typically fairly hot. The law enforcement doesn't really count on, if the Woodland Police Department or the Oregon Police Department asks you a question, did you arrest this guy? We should be able to answer them right then on the spot. So there's a lot of interconnectivity, but none of it is really defined here. When we have a person coming up to close escrow at the auditors, that's a very important thing for our client. We ought to be able to close escrow with the client regardless, but there's some interconnect and we haven't had that defined. I don't know. In the absence of any information, I would say we can always record, but I know we weren't able to in 2019 when this snafu occurred. And that was again, just you said it was a leak that caused the board to fry?
The HVAC system on the roof, the
Right,
condenser.
but in 2019, it was the HVAC system that caused the problem.
Correct.
Okay, so here I'm telling you, we've had a known problem about a leak forever and we've done nothing about it. And I don't know how this would address that.
Yeah, Carol, just a second. I guess we probably defined, it was my sense that we defined the problem. Of course, we were private enterprise in a business. It was more of a reputation risk versus were we worried that we wouldn't find the data? No, we knew we'd figure a way to find data, but it was more reputation risk. If our members couldn't access their money or do their business, then it was going to cause us problems to the bottom line. So that's kind of how we defined it in our world. How you do it in this agency here, I still think there's an element of reputation risk. I mean, if the county doesn't function, some people aren't going to like it.
It's probably more severe than that because the court systems are all automated, or automated, whatever word we want to use on that. And if we can't hold the court because our equipment's down, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's almost a constitutional violation.
Yeah, in that case with the leaking deal, if that would have happened in our institution, and it would have took a server out, it has switched over to the backup system and we'd still be off and running. That's how that would have worked in our area.
It wouldn't be automatic, but it would be we'd be able to get everything back up and running. Well, not everything, but the majority of infrastructure, we'd be able to get back up and running within a reasonable amount of time.
Gotcha.
In my experience, the kind of semi-automatic failover system is very expensive. So one of the lenses I'm going through here is $750K doesn't buy it in the way that it's been described.
Well, I think we're getting back to, and maybe it's really, if we make a decision, we're taking on an operational cost that we think's worthwhile for the county. I mean, I am almost kind of just putting this aside and saying, if this was something we did, this is really in operations of the county and we decided to bite that bullet. And I'm not saying we have, I'm just using.
Yeah.
Carolyn, did you have something? We've been ignoring you.
Nope, somebody just keeps bringing up the 2019 incident, and it's probably because the commissioners have a very vivid memory. I had to appeal to the commissioners, Dennis Weber and Arn Martinson were both in office at the time. That was under different leadership in IT, and our system did fail because we could not get previous leadership in IT to work with our vendor to make sure that the updates were performed, and our Eagle system was crashing, and we had people in the office that could not record their homes due to the failure of Eagle. So I had to enlist the help of the commissioners. So that's why they have this vivid memory. I had to send a very public email saying, help me get this done. It wasn't because there was a leak or a server. That was former leadership that wouldn't act. That's not the case now. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, a question for you. If I come in today to your office and record a document, how long does it take before someone in Olympia does know about it or someone else can find out about that document?
Well, that's I believe, a manual process that we employees run. So in addition to those documents automatically being stored into Laserfish, we do, and the auditor's office has a requirement to provide permanent retention of those documents, and that is Laserfish. However, we also send a copy to Washington State Archives, and I believe we do that on a monthly basis. We could do it more frequently, but it's a manual process for us. So we put a tickler in the calendar and monthly send those documents up to the state.
So it's possible that I could record something in your office and it could be a month before someone could find out about it.
Yes.
See, I consider that kind of a problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for in terms of definitions of moving the data around. And it almost, for those 2 days or so in 2019, you weren't able to record something, and I would scratch my head and say, why not? Sure, your machine was down, but you have the paperwork right there, just sign it off.
Because underwriting won't accept that. They'll only accept the recorded document. We literally had homeowners coming in to the office crying, saying that they were
Understood.
losing their earnest money because they couldn't record in time. It was terrible, but
How did you get that information to, did you have a straight hookup to the underwriter?
no, but they're able to.
How do they know that you weren't putting it on the computer?
I wish my recording manager was here. It's available publicly as soon as it goes into Laserfish. So that's already available publicly due to the auditor's office record search. So the minute that we scan it in to record it, it's going through Laserfish and it's available to the public. Not the official copy, but an unofficial copy.
Right. So this discussion is the essence of why we really needed a plan to understand everything. Is the Laserfish stuff stored offsite?
The Laserfish application, if we were to have a problem with our current backup system, a disaster, the whole Laserfish application and data would be gone.
Back sometime also when we purchased the product that we really depended on, like Laserfish, we actually put in the contract, should they go under, we own the product and they have to supply us all the development information and the code so that we could at least help ourselves in that event.
And certainly correct me if I'm not reading this right, but it sounds like we may be in agreement that we need some kind, our services to this county shouldn't be interrupted, and we need to have a way to do that. We need to have a system that'll do that, whether it's however it's done. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's a
statement?
fair statement, but we need to look at it because not most of the data we deal with is just not so useful. Most of the data that is useful is already in one form or another archived, like a contract that we signed.
So how do we get from, if we think it's important not to interrupt service to the citizens, how do we get from here and say something happens to that point? That's where I'm struggling, is how do we make that jump?
I'm struggling too, because it hasn't well defined what kind of problem we're going to handle. Like, for example, if an earthquake hit and this building collapses, we were told a few years ago the building would collapse. Other issues may become academic. But we'd still have a requirement. When can someone record in Cowlitz County, given the fact that the admin building has been completely destroyed? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well, if we got a building that vulnerable, the first answer is get IT out of here.
Well, but that would happen any place,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure a way. I personally believe that we need something, whatever you want to call it, that if you had a catastrophe, that the county could still operate and help the people. And I don't know how to move forward on it. I don't know. I believe that it just has to become part of your operations.
right. I think probably 95% of the scenarios we can conceive of would be handled if we fixed the HVAC system or the leaky roof or just simple stuff like that. And that's not necessarily cheap. Now, in the banking industry, you've got a very fancy engine where you can't commit the data and let the machine crash in the middle, because then somebody's account got withdrawn $100, but the $100 didn't go anyplace. So you protect against all that. And there's a lot of academia that talks about a poison pill. A poison pill is a situation where this machine who's handling the transaction chokes on something and the other machine takes over automatically. We can do all that, but that's not applicable here and is very complicated.
Yeah, and I don't disagree in that you're talking a banking institution handling people's money and stuff. That's probably, we're gonna probably be spend more and do more to make sure that that's safe. But we still need to do it at county level too, and I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you wouldn't buy a car with specs that didn't tell you a little bit more, right?
well, I'm trying to figure out how we give them direction so they can bring us back stuff that we can all understand and either agree or disagree and
Yeah.
make a decision on.
Maybe we just move to the other one and see what happens after a while. I mean, there are, what, 9 things, 7, 12? We're stuck on the first one.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So in all honesty, I think we're going to run into the same situation with proposal number 2. Again, this is our belief that this is another platform. We do currently use Varonis, but it's an on-premise solution, and Aaron Briggs is my subject matter expert, but it is a platform that we monitor whether or not people edit data. It gives us visibility to if there's breaches or people using brute force. It also allows us to identify stale data. And we are to the point where, again, this would be again, not an investment, but it would be an ongoing operational cost. This is just to uplift us and kind of, again, give us an opportunity to put those monies that we would allocate towards it into reserves for a couple of years if ARPA funding was sent our way.
Which ones in here, Kim, are one-time expense stuff? Is that easy to identify?
Not specifically. It would be an annual licensing term. So again, it's ongoing cost that includes all of the updates and patching and software as a service solution. It would give us additional modules that we don't currently have. Past practice has been kind of an à la carte approach.
I mean, of this list, like building security cameras, is that
Oh,
one
I'm
time?
sorry. You're on a different list page than I'm looking.
Oh,
at.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So you're asking for like actual infrastructure?
I'm just, we could probably sit here and talk on this, and I appreciate that you put them in priority, what you think, but all of these are things that you think need to happen in at some point in time.
That or their ongoing costs.
Yeah.
That impact our users, whether it be cybersecurity, whether it be support for our team. I also included enterprise licensing for Microsoft. Again, I believe that disaster recovery and business continuity is the most important.
Yeah.
Varonis is a platform we're using, and I was requesting funding to invest into more of that. Infrastructure would be like physical infrastructure would be the network switch replacement. And there's some routers and stuff like that that also need to be replaced. We don't have an articulated inventory, so I cannot give you exactly when things were purchased. We're working on that and what's due to be replaced. The phone system, that is a combination of ongoing support. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We just spent what, 600,000 on a phone system?
This is the same phone system.
Why is it on here?
Rather than using money that we currently have in the IT department and reserves. I was looking for an opportunity to offset the cost for cybersecurity with ARPA funds.
Yeah, I don't think that's proper to be in the same list.
Okay.
The same way with malware bytes licensing, it's not a big chunk of money, but that's operational costs.
I'm just trying to identify that would be a non-operational network switch replacement. That's a one-time thing. Security cameras is once they're installed and running.
Our current switch infrastructure is aging, it's becoming end of life.
Yeah.
I believe we had a meeting a few months back on this. But we're looking to replace it.
Yeah. But once they're replaced, they're replaced.
We'd be good for about probably another 7 to 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's all you guys understand what I'm trying to see? We're just.
The Varonis, is that's something we are already spending, right? So that's, again, you're interested in cost recovery in that sense is what that's for. That's nothing new that we'd have to buy.
It is something new. This would be going from an on-premise solution to a cloud-based solution.
So that would be new equipment of some kind, whether it's software or hardware.
With new features and capabilities.
I think I'm gonna have to, when we're talking ARPA, anything that we can kind of see as operational, I think I'm gonna have to. We're probably back, I'm not sure we're gonna get agreement here, and those kind of has concerns with all of us, but if we're talking this network switch replacement, and it's needed if they've been in there 7 years, right? I think we had and once again, we were more cautious. I get that. I think we had a 5-year cycle on most everything we had. And
Yeah, I got some feelings about that, but how much is your IT reserve fund?
Are you talking about like what the actual budget capacity is or like what cash?
What
is?
you have right now, that some of these you would already purchased and that would come out of that?
These are, some of them are included, some of them are like the malware licensing.
Right, no, I know that, but what I'm asking, maybe Kathy Funk can tell us. You've got a count where you're actually accumulating dollars in there in order
Right.
to, got a hand up from,
I mean, if you
hang
want
on.
cash, I mean, it's about $4.7 million.
How much?
4.7 million
4.7?
between the IT fund and reserves.
Yeah. It seems like that fund is dedicated to deal with these things. So there's Kathy. Hi,
Hello.
you heard your word, you heard your name.
Yes, I've been listening.
Okay. So the IT reserve fund and I'm not sure the proper name. Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, the IT fund has, Kim, I think Kim has the number correct. It's over $4 million. And then we also have the IT reserve fund, which I think it has about $400,000, in excess of $400,000.
What's the difference between those two funds?
They're separated. The one fund is primarily for their operational account, and the reserve fund really should be more like a savings account for those items that are long-term in nature, and money should be transferred there to help cover capital replacements, major capital replacements.
So I can't recall which one is which. Which one is the capital replacement one?
The reserve fund,
And is that the 4.7?
no,
That's a 400.
right? The operational one has an accumulated balance of over $4 million.
And that's been accumulated over 1 year, 2 years, or just the lifetime?
So the lifetime is several years. It's many years.
That seems odd that it would be that high.
Yeah.
No, okay. And what's the name of that fund?
It's just their regular IT fund, the IT fund that's tied to their operational revenues and expenses.
Got it. Okay.
I recommend that we actually look at that $4 million to look at what can we do with that. And also at the same time, Kim and I have been looking at how we do her billings for next year and how we make this more streamlined and understandable. So.
Yeah, I would kind of concur. Maybe we should, if we got an operational fund that's grown over 4 million, we have operation funds available to take care of some operational
Right.
needs that maybe we can work on some of these things with. So would we be opposed to looking at how we can use those? Because I do agree. I think there needs to be a backup system, and what that looks like. You know, I'm open to different suggestions, but I don't disagree with you that if something goes down, that we still need to be able to serve, and we need to be to that fairly quickly. I'm not smart enough in that arena to know what it looks like. But we should take a look at that fund, because maybe some of these needs, if it's already in your operations, and it's in her budget, if some of these things are fit within that, is it even before us? Or,
Right.
I mean,
That's what I'm afraid of, is that maybe there was a picture that said we've got this free dollars out there that can be used or lost, and that's not the case. I mean, we just funded in small amounts some of the granges, but there are all kinds of other, that's citizen money, right? And
yeah,
that 4.7 million isn't helping them at the moment.
no, but if they can use that 4.7 million that's in their operations,
They should.
they should, and I don't even know if that's I'm sure maybe they want to bring it to us, or I'm not even sure it needs to come. You're running your department, you need that, you have the operation funds that are sitting there that have been worked over the years and through whatever formula we gave you.
I would
There's
still
one
have
sense
to,
to me that you should just be able to upgrade and do what you need to do to keep your ship running.
it's a multi-year contract, so therefore I would need board approval.
Okay. But it could be used on some of these other things, probably. I mean, if you have an operations fund and you know those switches need replaced, boom, that doesn't need to come to us, really. I mean, your stuff is, you've got a life cycle on these things, and you've got funds coming in, you save for them, boom. It's almost like a depreciation account type thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. You would need board approval, because right now it's sitting in fund balance. And so to move it from fund balance to an operating budget, but I'm proposing that in July, we bring forward a budget amendment. So that could be very feasible to be done then.
Right. Just to address them bringing this under ARPA, I think a lot of departments have actually come and just try to utilize the funding. Even for expenses that have been ongoing or that they have previously needed to expense out. It's just an opportunity to either bring down the county cost if it qualifies. So I think that's why some of these were brought forward.
Why don't we roll this over to next Tuesday afternoon's workshop? We can continue asking questions and working with staff and getting questions answered. I think we're pretty close to being able to identify about 6 problems that we have that we need to address. But I want to double check with the experts so that I have a better understanding of that so I think we want to move forward, just so give us another week or so to study. If you're all right with that.
Well, I think this may be the right time to ask for a thorough statement of, or thorough plan. And you can't develop that in a week.
Okay. I don't want to leave the impression that I'm okay with the status quo, because we need to fill in the gap and reduce our liability and solve some of the problems. But I also agree, it's kind of nebulous, you know, how much is it going to cost? You don't really know, because it's still a little bit of unclear what the problem is, at least in my mind. So I want us to go forward and
Yeah, there's something that happened in the past, past people in charge of the department, and they had their own set of visions or problems, but they always were able to, I'll use a pejorative word, they were always able to hoodwink the Board of Commissioners at the time, because the board said, well, I guess so, I don't know. And I'm saying we need to know. We just can't blindly accept a statement without understanding. Like, in reality, we've been operating for decades and across the, I mean, you tell me how many counties have this kind of luxurious may not be the right word, but sort of automatic, semi-automatic failover and stuff like that.
The platform that was recommended is actually used by the city of Longview and possibly the PUD. So I mean, it's even within our local area that it's the Datto platform is used for other municipalities. And I could reach out to the Association of Counties. And
It sort of doesn't matter, because I'm just, again, without having the proper definition of what it is we're trying to protect against, we are going to buy everything under the sun. And most of these things are going to be ongoing costs. And if we need it, then we do it. But if we don't, then we shouldn't do it. Just because ARPA money is around doesn't mean it should be used without much thought. And I do mean we've got to be very careful on how we use the money, particularly money that begets additional expenses and time.
Yeah. The fact that we throw ARPA in here, I think kind of clouds things. I'd take the whole discussion on ARPA money out and let's decide what we need as a county. And then how we fund it, we can sit here and say, well, we'll fund this out of this, fund this out of that. So I would suggest, let's take the whole ARPA discussion out of this thing and just, let's focus on what we think that the county needs and why, if we don't have a failover system, man, we're not going to be all operate this and this and this and what it's going to do the public. And Arn's definition is going to be way more technical than mine, because I don't have his mind on technical issues. So, but I do agree that there's a problem there at some scope, we need to fix it, and I'm just not sure what it all is or how to get there. But we've kind of it just feels like we've let the fact that ARPA's in here kind of cloud it, and we need to take that out, because if we really need it, we'll find a way to fund it. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So touch base again next week or?
What kind
Why-
of information would you like me to present next week?
Why don't you, you talked about reaching out to the Association of Counties. They must have had a game plan going in. If counties, other counties did this and what they were protecting, that might be a good place to start and see what they were trying to protect and see if it pertains to us. Maybe they were doing a broader spectrum or a smaller spectrum. I don't know, but to me, when I was trying to develop a plan, if I found somebody that had something to use, and at least I had a starting point, whether I felt I needed to pare it down or I felt I needed to ramp it up, at least I had a starting point.
I can give you a
Yeah.
starting point and I can reach
Okay.
out and then I'll let you know next.
And then we go from there. Can we do that? Okay.
But it's not, you won't have the time by next week. You were asking for it next week.
I can reach out to the
Dennis?
counties and provide an update.
Yeah, except partial feediness is only certainly confuses my feeble mind. I really do want to see how all this ties together. And I don't see it yet. And the suggestion of other counties' plans sounds good. Use anybody's plan. But the counties in particular are going to have the same constraints on the data as we, and if they don't, we look at it and say, oh, we're not doing enough here and we're doing too much here. That's valuable information.
Actually, time frame, Kim, I'm going to kind of leave that up to you, what you're comfortable. If you get stuff in and you say, oh man, this takes me a little more time, you just work out the schedule with Kelly to come back and see us. Okay.
Will do.
Yeah, but may I say, I want something a little more thoughtful and complete, and I don't know that you can do that in even under a month.
I will touch base with the board.
On that note,
Yeah.
it came to mind, has anyone been able to reach out to Woodland about their project? I think last meeting we had discussed I would contact Public Works and we've reached out. We're just waiting for their update, but I think someone was going to contact Woodland
Oh,
and see.
I think that was on me. I apologize. Oh,
That's okay. Friendly reminder.
darn
It
it.
was about the 2.6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have contacted?
no, are you saying that
Oh.
this is about the 2.6?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
My bad.
Oh, it's-
What's the administrator's name? Brian.
Pete Boyce.
Pete Boyce is the city administrator. Travis Goddard kind of runs this.
Go through Pete.
Yeah.
Well, that's all that I had for ARPA.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous? I think everybody's leaving us. Okay. I don't see anything else. Any further things, gentlemen? Okay. We will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.